everyone, and thank you for downloading. This is Football a la Turca episode 4, and we're coming back to you with the matchday 25 discussion and results for the Turkish Super League. Nothing else to talk about in terms of European results or Turkish Cup results. So let me get straight to it. Burak Sezgin is not here with us today. Özer Dindjer does join us, but to replace Burak, we have another Fenerli voice. We have Patrick Cox from London, England. Patrick, thank you for joining us and bailing us out so short notice.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, before we start talking about the football matches, Patrick, can you tell us just a little bit more about yourself? Obviously, people can hear your name, Patrick Cox. That doesn't sound very Turkish. What's your relationship to Turkey, to Fenerbahce?
Sure. So I'll try and keep it brief because I know we don't have too long. So after a gap year, I spent 6 weeks going from Istanbul over to Cairo. I went to the School of Oriental and African Studies to study Middle Eastern Studies. Fortunately, got persuaded by my Turkish professor to switch to Turkish, which meant a year abroad in Istanbul in 2010-11. Fortunately, and to the annoyance of Özer, got friendly with a Fenerbahce fan in my first year who set me on the true course of being a Fenerli. When I got out to Istanbul, I was at Boğaziçi University, and I guess they had an equivalent of a freshers' fair in their sort of main campus. And I was wandering around thinking, you know, this would be a good place to meet people. Obviously, there's like music society, history society, you know, rock climbing society, caving, whatever. And then I happened to come across like the UniFeb, which is a Üniversiteli Fenerbahçeliler, which is for non-Turkish speakers like student Fenerbahce supporters society, basically. So we don't really have that kind of thing in the UK, and I'm not sure about in Europe, but it was completely new to me. So joined up, suddenly became this kind of cult figure among the people because I was this one foreign guy out of thousands of Turks from across the nation, really. Moved back to Istanbul after I graduated 2013, went to as many games as I could, really. And yeah, the rest is history, as they say.
And of course, you and Özer go way back.
Yes.
So I can imagine how that infuriated him that you, as a friend of his, decided to support the arch nemesis.
Well, all I can say is it's a good thing my microphone's been on mute for the last couple of minutes.
Okay, so it's gonna give us a different look, even from Burak's perspective for sure. As a relatively new Fenerbahce fan, you've unfortunately gone through many lows and not that many highs yet. So
yes,
but this season definitely the peak of those lows, I imagine, unless maybe the tumultuous 2011-12 period, perhaps. But let's dig into the Super League results. Sivasspor against Malatyaspor. This match ended 2-0. Goals here came from Fatih Aksoy in the 35th minute and Douglas in the 45th minute. And both those goals were assisted by Özer Dindjer, former Fenerbahce player, of course. So I'm going to throw to you first, Pat. What did you think of this match?
I thought it was a good match, good performance by Sivasspor. It's quite interesting to see how Malatyaspor have sort of dropped really over the past couple of weeks, to be honest. They didn't really show too much mettle to me that put them sort of, right at the top a couple of months ago, really. And it's good. I kind of lost track of Özer, having actually met him randomly when I was on my Erasmus year. But I think, Sivasspor deserved winners for this match.
Actually, I know his cousin. He works on the FIFA database too. There's a big Trabzonspor supporter.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So gonna throw to you now, Özer. Özer.
I thought you guys were talking about me then, just for a second.
Yeah, I was confused.
We met much longer.
For a moment, I was a little bit confused. But what did you think about this match, Özer?
Yeah, I think Sivas deserved the 3 points in that game, and I also can't really understand how Malatya have fallen from grace so much. Although it could be that they're saving themselves for the Turkish Cup, perhaps. But Fatih Aksoy played a very important role in both goals for Sivas, and I think he's an interesting player to watch. Diabate had a chance to make it 3-0, and he missed in the second half. All in all, it was a good game, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Malatyaspor having a drop, and that's something that they have in common with quite a few teams that were looking really bright in the first half of the season, but really have had a drop off in the second half of the season. Aleksic still, though, does manage to stand out week in, week out for me. Continues to be one of those players that gives the Super League a little bit extra flair. Reminds me a little bit of Gabriel Torre. I don't really have anything much more to add to this. This was, I think, a necessary victory for Sivasspor because they had been slipping as well. Malatyaspor, of course, not really in the danger zone or anything yet, but with all those teams in the relegation zone picking up so many points, you never know, it can creep up to you quickly. Just look at Göztepe. But let's move over to Saturday results. The first match we're going to talk about here is Trabzonspor against Akhisar. Akhisar, of course, still bottom of the table with 21 points. Got a win last week, their first win in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. Jeremy Bokila here opening up the scoreline in the 65th minute, but Anthony Nwakaeme again scored a brace last week, of course, and again getting on the score sheet here in the 70th minute, pulls things level. And just a couple minutes later, 5 minutes or so later, Trabzonspor are awarded a penalty. There's a VAR check, but it does get awarded still. The VAR check was more on whether or not it was a dive or not on whether to give a penalty. So it was more to make sure if it was a penalty or not. And I personally, I'm still, I don't know either way. I haven't been able to see it in enough angles to say that definitively penalty or no. But Jose Sosa steps up, converts, and puts the final scoreline on the scoreboard 2-1 to Trabzonspor. And that's again Akhisar losing a match in which they take the lead in the 65th minute. 2 weeks ago, I seem to recall, they did the exact same thing and then still lost. And again today here, Trabzonspor with that win, putting themselves firmly in contention for that European ticket. Well, they're on 40 points now. Let's throw to you first, Özer, your opinions on this match.
Yeah, I mean, Akhisar took the lead from a Trabzonspor corner, funnily enough. It was a classic counter-attack, 4 versus 2, if I remember correctly. But as you say, they just couldn't hold on to it and once again threw away the lead. Trabzonspor probably on balance deserved to win the game, although the penalty decision was very dubious, in my opinion. I think it was a dive, and the VAR got that wrong. So that's another one I can add to my list.
No, it's not, because the VAR called to the referee to double check because the referee awarded it. So essentially, the VAR is saying, "I think you have to look at this again." Probably. So in the VAR's opinion, it was not a penalty, but the referee stuck to his guns and kept with the decision. So you cannot add that to your list.
Oh God, I'll get there.
I'm looking forward to this, by the way.
Yeah, definitely. This is something we had to cut out yet last week because of time restraints. But basically, Özer and myself got into this huge argument about VAR, and he's totally against it. I'm pro VAR, of course. So we decided we're gonna do a special VAR-centric episode, maybe at the end of the season or something.
That sounds good. Yeah.
An international break, and then we can discuss the merits and such of the video assistant referee.
Yeah.
but Pat, throwing to you first and foremost before you give the opinion on the overall match. Did you think it was a penalty or not?
I think it was a very soft call, to be honest. It could have gone either way. I mean, football's football, and regardless of whether there's VAR or not, it's just one of those things where in the moment you just have to make a decision, really, and whether it's because the match was going on Trabzon and quite a lively atmosphere or whatever, but ultimately it was a penalty, and they were able to capitalize on that.
Yeah. What about your opinion on the match in general? Deserved win for Trabzonspor, penalty or no penalty, still in terms of the balance of the match?
Sure. I mean, watching the game, I was surprised, I guess, that Akhisar are where they are, to be honest, because they performed rather well, I thought. But ultimately, you've got a Trabzonspor that are doing very well. They're not right in the race, but still kind of on the outskirts to some extent. Got a great set of players there. I think even if they hadn't got that penalty, they probably would have ground out a win ultimately, because they had a strong performance for me.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think they look very good for that European spot at the end of the season.
Yeah, especially if we get down later to some of the other results this weekend. But yeah, I do agree with what you're saying about Akhisar. I think I've said it in the past couple of episodes too, that, usually every season we do have like at least one ugly duckling that just stands out where you're seeing, well, these guys are definitely going down. They're not up to the standards of the league. I fail to have that feeling with any of the teams really in the bottom three right now. Like Göztepe for me does not play like a team that deserves to go down, despite the fact that, yeah, maybe they're not getting the job done. Same thing here for Akhisar really. I mean, look, these guys won the Turkish Cup, the Super Cup. They didn't get a lot of points in Europe, just 1 point, but they did play almost in, I think, every single match of them. They were competitive at least to a certain extent. So I don't know, they don't seem to strike me as a team that deserves to go down. Usually there is this team that's just way behind the rest of the pack and like 10, 12, 13, 14 points behind at this stage of the season already, and there just isn't that team right now. And I have a big problem with 3 teams dropping down directly. I think it has huge financial repercussions on those teams in terms of TV money and all that kind of stuff. It's very important. It could be potentially devastating to those types of clubs. I think the format of the league needs to be shuffled. There needs to be a change. Maybe have one team drop down directly and the other 2 teams of the bottom 3 perhaps have them play playoffs with the number 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever from the second division. Like, you already have playoffs right now from the second division for the numbers 2 to 6, I believe. Why don't you just add 2 more teams to that and add those 2 teams from the Super League to that? I mean, I think having 3 clubs go down straight away, that's just something you don't see very often anymore. You don't see it in many other leagues either. Most leagues do have a sort of a playoff system in place already because of the financial repercussions from going down. It's just so big on those clubs, and it could be, for a club like Göztepe who's finally finding their footing again financially, that's potentially damaging. But of course, we're talking about Akhisar here and not Göztepe. As for Trabzonspor, I agree with you guys as well on that part. I mean, I think they're looking good for Europe, especially if Beşiktaş were to get a European ban or something, and also just purely based on the table, and also the possibility of Galatasaray winning the cup still. So I think they are looking quite good right now for getting at least a European ticket, and that will be the first time in a year, 4 or 5 years maybe, that Trabzon are representing Turkey in Europe. So I look forward to seeing them back in European competition and hopefully getting to the group stages, because they do tend to go out in the qualifiers a little bit too frequently to my liking. Anything else to add, gentlemen?
Yeah, I think last time, if I remember correctly, Trabzonspor were in Europe is when they were knocked out by Juventus in the Europa League. So they had a pretty good run under Mustafa Reşit Akçay, but
yeah, you're right.
It'd be good to see them back.
Yeah, they had a good run in Europe, but then their league run suffered, I think.
That's right.
Let's move over to Ankaragücü Bursaspor. Of course, this match's proceeds went to the victims of last week's unfortunate bus crash in which 2 young Ankaragücü fans perished. That's a great token of respect from the club to the families of the victims, of course. Unfortunately, as far as the match is concerned, it was pretty much a bore fest, in my opinion. Not much happening here. We had a couple of moments from Orgil, an attempt from distance from Boyd, an attempt from distance from Aytaç Kara. But really, 2 teams that are very much in the thick of things in terms of the relegation zone, especially Bursaspor. They didn't look like that was the case today in this match, I would say. It didn't feel like either of them were particularly interested in getting that win at any cost. Perhaps a predictable scoreline. Pat, what do you think?
Yeah, neither club particularly showed too much spirit to win that in the end. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, condolences to the families of those who lost, because it's a tragic thing when these things happen. And, especially I guess when it comes to dos takımlar that you have with Ankara and Bursaspor. But yeah, unfortunately, the football didn't really live up to any sort of particular affair.
Yeah, betting man should have backed the draw in this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no coincidence that both matches this season between the two of them ended on a draw. Feels a little bit, I don't know. I don't see the point in...
Go on, say it.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna go there. In Dutch, it's called competitievervalsing. I'm just gonna call it like that. So, Özer, your opinion?
Yeah, not really much to add to this game. The two flash players for the last couple of weeks, Orgil and Tyler Boyd, had a few flashes of brilliance in the game, but didn't really come to anything. And hopefully they can both improve in the next games going forward. But it does look very difficult for Bursa, I have to say.
Yeah, but this just seemed like a little bit of a handshake agreement. Like, let's both just take a point and move forward. Let's move on to the main event of the evening on Saturday. Başakşehir, the league leaders, took on Fenerbahce, and this match ended 2-1 to leaders Başakşehir, who got a relatively late winner. Robinho had opened the scoreline in the 19th minute, but Roberto Soldado had pulled things level in the 73rd minute. Napoleoni got the winner though in the 83rd minute after a shot/pass from Marcio Mosoro. There were quite a few penalty shouts here, 2 penalty shouts at least for a handball from Başakşehir players, so a penalty shout for Fenerbahce. That was both of those were before the equalizer, and yeah, also a couple of pretty physical challenges, I should say. Pat, I'm going to throw to you first, since you're our resident Fenerbahce analyst today.
Ultimately, we lost the game, and lots of talking points of how we lost that. And I mean, I could talk for a long time about Volkan in goal. The performance itself was actually rather good, I'd say, especially in the second half. I mean, we showed a lot of fight. I think the Fenerbahce soul that's been kind of missing for the majority of the season, and even some halves of certain games, was definitely visible in the second half. And to be honest, we did come very close to actually getting a winner. Zaj, or however you pronounce that name, looks like a fantastic signing. I mean, although his finishing could have been a little bit better, he was getting into all kinds of great positions across the pitch. Had a couple of chances as well to get headed goals as well. And yeah, I think ultimately, we were unlucky that we weren't able to get the ball on target. Really, a couple of headers that I actually, one moment where I did actually fall off my chair thinking we'd scored, only to realise that the ball had just glanced wide. I don't know. Obviously, we could have won it, and I think the disappointment is more the fact that we could have won it. It wasn't like, like that derby the other day, for example, especially when you go 2-0 down, it's like, well, it's Besiktas, it's away. They've got fans in the stadium who are kind of chanting for them to win. When it's a game, it's against a team like Başakşehir who don't have certain things going for them, but in other places they do in terms of players. I think Fenerbahce can be proud, and I think bar the obviously Super Derby coming up next month, I think if we can show the fight that we did in the second half, we should do quite well in the sort of final third of the season. And having looking at the table as knowing how close it is, it should be at least a bit of confidence to give both to the fans and to the players to say, look, we can actually do this. It's just getting that final kind of killer touch to finish things off.
Yeah, and Ozzy, of course, you were watching this match with both fingers crossed. When Fenerbahce pulled things level, it's like Pat said, there were some opportunities there, and especially Miha Zajc had a big one. And I felt that you could again feel the vulnerability that Başakşehir do have. The same you could have seen when they drew against Erzurum. As soon as Erzurum pulled things level there, they started, doubt crept in a little bit, and the opponent got opportunities to perhaps take it away, take it home. Again, here you could see it, I think, and Pat points out a few couple interesting points, of course, where the lack of home support. I mean, the sound that you heard when they scored the winner, I mean, I'd say, what's the opposite of deafening?
Yeah.
But Özer, your thoughts on the match? How disappointed are you that they didn't drop any points on this day?
Well, I remember seeing a banner many years ago held at a Fenerbahçe stadium. It read, "Bir gün herkes Fenerbahçeli olacak," which translates as "one day everybody will be a Fenerbahçe supporter." And on Saturday, that day was my day. I supported Fener, I celebrated their goal, and for once I was actually sad when they lost the match. So it was a very strange day for me. But I think, like Pat was saying, there was a glimmer of hope after Soldado got the goal, got the equaliser. But that second wave just never really came back for Fener. And I think we should maybe focus on the elephant in the room. I don't know, it might be a bit of a sensitive topic for you, Pat, but Volkan Demirel.
Yeah.
I think he's been costing Fenerbahçe games, points, trophies even since 2008, maybe longer.
Well, I think having watched the Galatasaray highlights as well, I mean, it's a tale of two goalies, really. I think just imagine how different Turkish football of the last, or at least 5 years would have been like if we'd had a Muslera and you'd had a Volkan. I mean, it would have been completely different.
Very true, very true.
Even today, you've had an absolute blinder of a game. And
yeah, absolutely.
This is, sorry, go on.
I was going to say Fenerbahçe signed Harun from Bursaspor, who is a great goalkeeper, and Berke Özer, who's 18 from Altınordu, who is again like one of the hottest prospects in that position in Turkish football. I don't remember him making a single appearance in the Super League, so he's effectively been wasted. At least this year's been wasted. All for Volkan Demirel, this 37-year-old mascot for the club, who doesn't seem to be actually doing anything productive for the team.
Yeah, I mean, look, you did get two new goalkeepers in the transfer window, and the previous coaches both had put Volkan next to the team. Harun was playing. Harun still played in the European matches, put in decent performances against Zenit, and it's kind of puzzling that Yanal insists on playing Volkan. Obviously, that harkens back to their rapport they built up in Yanal's previous stint, I'm sure. I mean, it's favoritism, really. It's not really nepotism, but in a way, I guess you could frame it like that. And it's similar something that one of my biggest sources of frustration with Şenol Güneş at Beşiktaş is similar there, where you have players that are potentially not the best option. I'm not going to say harming the team necessarily, but definitely not the best option. But just because of the manager's bias towards that player in favor of him, he's playing. I mean, I don't see the point in playing a 35, 36-year-old Volkan Demirel over Harun Tekin.
He's actually 37, Volkan.
Is he?
37 years old, yeah, extraordinary.
Are you sure?
He's still playing. Yeah, because I checked this before we got recording, because 37. I thought he was about 35, 36 as well. I was absolutely horrified to find out he was 37 and still playing at the top level.
Holy crap, you're right. I thought he was 35 too. Oh my god, yeah. I mean, how old is Harun? He's 29 years old, so why are you playing a 37-year-old player in a season where I mean, this is not a season where you can afford to give him his, walk into the distance or cowboy style, whatever it is. I mean, this is not the time. You're still fighting relegation. You're not out of the woods yet. I mean, the teams around you are winning too. And there's still very much a possibility. I mean, look, if Göztepe suddenly starts winning some games, then you're in trouble. I mean, had Göztepe, and spoiler alert, but Göztepe didn't win on the weekend against Kasımpaşa, but had they won, then both Bursaspor and Fenerbahçe would have been back in the thick of things, level on 28 points in a shared 16 position. So I don't think you have the luxury of playing favorites here. You just have to make sure the best person plays. And I mean, I don't know about the second goal. For me, a one-on-one situation is always kind of 50-50. And Mosoro, the ball kind of agonizingly rolled towards Napoleone, but I don't think you can really fault Volkan there. But the first goal, that's on Volkan in my opinion. So it's really tough to defend him there. But I think it's more than enough said. I think we're both a little bit seeing similar things. I hope Janal will not insist on, well, maybe I do hope he will, but let's hope that, no, but really, let's hope for Fenerbahce and Fenerbahce's fans' sake, they've gone through plenty this season, that Janal will not insist on extending Volkan's contract, maybe give him a role as an assistant coach or something like that, a goalkeeper coach, whatever. But I think next season you need to move forward with either Harun or Berke.
Yeah.
But moving forward to Sunday, let's get into the results on Sunday. Alanyaspor against Erzurumspor. Again, still Alanyaspor not fully out of the woods because of the teams around them winning as well, but they got another win here. This was a very interesting match, ended 2-1 in favor of Alanyaspor. Papi Cisse getting the scoring started in the 9th minute, but that one got disallowed for offside. In the 45th minute, he got on the score sheet again. Wellington then doubled the scoreline in the 59th minute, but that was after Papi Cisse had missed a penalty in the 50th minute, and Wellington's 59th minute goal was also a penalty. Then Gilles Sunu from Erzurumspor pulled one back for the visitors, also from the penalty spot. And then in added time, another penalty was called. This was also for Alanyaspor. Papi Cisse insisted on taking it, missed again, and he's got 2 penalty misses in one match. Fortunately for him, it does not cost his team any points. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. A couple of weeks ago, they won 2-0 away at Trabzonspor, with that all kind of starting with the domino effect after Rodallega messed up his Panenka penalty, and then they ended up winning that match thanks to Papi Cisse. But Cisse here almost, his pride maybe getting in the way a little bit. Probably should have let Wellington take that second one. But Cisse on 12 goals now in the top scorer standing. And let's talk a little bit about the VAR decision on the offside and the penalties. I don't think there's really all that much to talk about. But Özer, what do you think on these calls? Were they correct?
I think the offside was correct, but the penalty shot, I don't know if there was much of a chance for the defender to move his arm out of the way. It looked like it had come literally from a point blank range just below where he was standing. So I don't think he was really given much of an opportunity there. So I think that was very harsh, and I think you could easily have seen that the referee waved play on had it not gone to VAR.
We've seen some similar handballs for Başakşehir the day before, where especially the second one, which we actually didn't really get to, but that was pretty. That arm was out a little bit and definitely hit it, but probably not intentional, and maybe similar thing here. But 4 penalties in one match, that's the first time that happens this season. I didn't find the statistic on when that's the last time that happened. Quite insane.
I have that for you. Apparently it's the first time in 25 years, the last time being 94 when Galatasaray beat Samsun 6-1.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
And did Arif get all those penalties?
Wouldn't put it past him, mate. Found it difficult to score otherwise. Of course, he scored a beauty against Man United in '93, but that's for a different show. Another interesting point about Cisse, actually, he's missed every single penalty this season. 4 out of 4.
Well, I think he should probably stop taking them. But he definitely has been of great value to Alanyaspor, and especially their resurgence under Sergen Yalçın, scoring 12 goals. One of the top scorers in the league right now. Hugo Rodallega did not score this weekend, so I think he's left on 12, and so is Cisse now. So they're both trailing closely to top scorer and Baye Diagne. Pat, what's your opinion on the match, the penalties, VAR decision on the offside?
I think I've got to agree with Özer. Not just to talk about this match, but just to talk about sort of these calls and maybe even VR in general. I think, for me anyway, what I find most frustrating is just the lack of consistency. And my expectations from VAR when it first sort of came out was that there would at least be more of this consistency in terms of, if in one match from point blank range, a defender's hand is out and it gets hit by the ball, it will be a penalty. And then if in the next match the same thing happens, it will be a penalty because there's continuity. Kind of on the fence with VR in terms of it has its advantages when you do need to make those calls that are, whether it's a potential foul or something the ref hasn't seen. But if you're going to call it one way, you have to just make sure you do it make the same call every single time, or at least have a kind of fixed rule book or guideline of what you're going to do. Because otherwise, this isn't the 90s where you miss it once and that's it. Mm-hmm. This, things fall on Twitter so I've used a very Turkish word there. Things come onto Twitter minutes after the incident happened, and you can just see if a call was right, and immediately decisions can be made. And the federation have to realise that there's a backlash in terms of what happens, and if one referee in one match says one thing, but in the next match he says something completely different, it's like it only fans the flames of certain clubs feeling certain things against certain referees.
But I think the problem here is I don't think either of these any of these penalties were awarded by VAR, or at least not the one that you guys are talking about. It wasn't awarded by VAR, right? I mean, obviously, VAR doesn't award penalties, but I don't think the referee consulted there. And the thing with VAR is they are only really allowed to intervene on a clear error. Now, that's again something that's left open to interpretation. I think the thing with handballs, unless it's very clearly intentional or not so, I think they're not really allowed to intervene, and it's up to the interpretation of the referee, which makes it difficult because then you, of course, have consistency issues, but you have VAR or no VAR, you have those. I mean, look how much in the past, I think we were forgetting perhaps how much debating we had in previous seasons just about, that should have been a penalty, that should have been a red card, this and that. It still happens with VAR, but less so, I think. Now sometimes we're debating a VAR decision, but I think if you put it relative to each other, I think there was a lot more controversy in years prior than there is now. Obviously now when you have a VAR decision that's deemed wrong, even when sometimes it's not, like for example, we talked about that the defender deliberately heading a ball or intercepting a ball and it going to a player in an offside position, how that play is allowed to continue, which is completely counterintuitive, but that's the rules.
Yeah.
I think the thing is there's less controversy, but when VAR is making a mistake, which I don't really think nothing like that happened here. But then it's extra painful because you do expect from VAR to be perfect almost. You expect them to have the right decision because they do have time to look at it from many different angles, and they don't have to make a decision in a split second like the referee does. So I think the tolerance for a mistake from VAR is a lot lower than it is for, well, maybe it should be at least, than it is for the mistake of a referee. Of course, in Turkey, if a referee makes a mistake, he is demonized straight away, so that doesn't really matter. But I think it's even more painful if a mistake happens that is initiated by VAR. But of course, VAR does not have the last call. They can only call a referee to take a look, unless, of course, it's on something that's offside, that's a clear offside, like we had today with the Galatasaray match with Diagne's second goal. It got disallowed. It's something the referee doesn't have to come and check. That's something they can clearly determine with the technology, and then they can just say, it was offside, and then the goal is disallowed. But in some cases, like mainly penalties and red cards and stuff like that, they're going to always have to call the referee to come and check, and he has the final say. VAR does not decide. So it's always a referee that decides ultimately. So it's, when you were talking about consistency, I think it's important that VAR intervenes on similar positions. Like there have been penalty positions, I think, where not so much handballs, because handballs are always difficult because that is interpretation. like I said. So then it's not always easy for VAR to interfere, whether it's a clear error or not. But on different sorts of falls, I think there should be more consistency. Like, for example, I keep bringing back to this example, but it's one of the most blatant ones, in my opinion, throughout the season, was the penalty kick that Konyaspor earned against Galatasaray in the final few minutes in their 1-1 draw. That, to me, that there's no intervention from VAR there is that's unacceptable. And the same thing happened between the Başakşehir-Fenerbahçe match, where Başakşehir got that goal and it got disallowed for offside, and VAR was quote unquote offline for the last 60 minutes of the match. Things like that should not happen, and those things should not be allowed to happen, and going forward should never happen again. But with handball, when it comes to the interpretation of the referee, it's difficult to say we want more consistency from VAR, because ultimately the final decision ends with the ref. And let's move over to the Çaykur Rizespor against Kayserispor match. Rize, of course, coming off their first defeat in 2019 last week away at Fenerbahçe, but like I predicted then, I don't think that would put much of a dent in their stellar streak of matches. They continue their winning ways, and this time they are the ones to beat Kayserispor. Kayserispor were also unbeaten in 2019, but less impressively so, I would say. Vedat Muric getting on the score sheet twice here. He scored the 1-0 and the 3-0 in the 22nd and the 66th minute. The second goal was from a penalty. In the meantime, those two goals from Muric were sandwiched. A very nice goal from Brian Samudio in the 56th minute. Really a pretty straightforward win for Çaykur Rizespor. I think there was one moment where Kayserispor were really dangerous. Umut Bulut striking the crossbar from distance, but really not really much to say here. Rizespor continue their impressive run. No Atif Şeşu stealing the show today, Pat, so that must be a mind consolation for Fenerbahçe fans.
For sure, yeah. No, I think they put a good performance there. No surprise in my eyes, to be honest. I think after their first defeat away from home, Fenerbahçe needed to win, really. It was no surprise that they came out they did. Dominant performance with a 3-0 victory to boot.
Nothing much to add, really. I was disappointed at the ease of which Kayseri conceded 3 goals, having been unbeaten for the last 10 games. Mm-hmm. But then, like you said, Rize are one of the on-form teams. I think they're the 5th best team in the league in terms of their form graphic. Yeah. So their trajectory is certainly on the up. Yeah. I don't know if any of you saw the shot from Umut Bulut from just outside the box. Mm-hmm. Real thunderbolt of a strike, which really deserved to go in, but he really rolled back the ears there. It was quite an impressive shot.
That was really the only thing they did throughout the match. Exactly. Really.
Nothing much else to report.
So Rize just impressive, immediately taking the match by the throat, so to speak, and just going up and over Kayseri and then not looking back. An easy win for Rize. There was maybe the largest thing of note here was the fight in the stands, Kayserispor and Rizespor fans getting into it, apparently having to do with Rizespor's fans not really being too fond of Kayseri coach Hikmet Karaman. So apparently there were some scuffles regarding that. Then let's move forward to the next match. That was Göztepe against Kasımpaşa, a very important match for Göztepe. They had to win. Knife between the teeth, like we say in Belgium. Must-win match for them, and that did not happen. It ended all square, 0-0. Kasımpaşa still without a win in 2019. They have played 8 games, lost 6, drawn their last 2, but it does have to be mentioned that their last draw last week against Trabzonspor, they came back from a 2-0 deficit. And of course here today, I think the most important thing for them was not to lose, to not get in the trouble, in the danger zone, so to speak. But Göztepe, unlike Ankaragücü and Bursaspor, were showing heart, were showing willingness to win, especially in the first half. But right at the end, it was Beto who had to save them from a very late potential defeat with a fantastic save on his goal line. Let's go to you first, Özer, because I know you have a very particular interest in Göztepe. So what did you think of this match?
Yeah, that's right. And to illustrate that, I actually watched the entire match. It was the early kickoff for the weekend. And yeah, starting from the end, actually, Beto made an unbelievable, superhuman save at the last minute to keep
fantastic.
To keep it at 0-0, and it could be a really golden save at the end of the season if they're able to stay up. But the disappointing thing for me for Göztepe was that they were just so toothless up front. It didn't help that Jerome and Halil Akmanar, who I think is one of their best players, both started the game on the bench.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, they just didn't create any clear-cut chances. I think Deniz Kada had one shot that flew off the post in the first half. But other than that, they didn't come close to scoring. And it was quite disappointing because I thought at home in front of their fans against a very struggling Kasımpaşa, it was a perfect opportunity for them to pick up 3 points, but they failed. So I am very concerned about Göztepe now.
What about you, Pat?
Yeah, I think that they came out quite strong. I thought Göztepe, they had a few chances, but they really saved them at the death. The very end, fantastic to have those reflexes way on at the end of the match. I mean, the thing is, I've just had a quick look at fixtures coming up. They've got Beşiktaş away, Başakşehir away. Not easy games coming up, to be honest. And neither do actually, just moving back very briefly, just to Rizespor as well. They've got all of the sort of top four to play. So, I mean, interesting things coming up. And although we've still got, 2.5 months left to go, every game matters now. And when there's such a big gap, when there's such a small gap even between, 6th or 7th place.
2 points. No, they're 2 points behind Fenerbahce and Bursaspor, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah,
a win here would have really.
It would have really changed. I mean, like Pat was saying, that the table is so tight right now. I think Ankaragücü, Sivas, and the other team on 31 points, who is Kasımpaşa, are only 6 points away from European spot, and 6 points away from. 4 points away from
it's only
relegation.
1 point, by the way. Göztepe are on 27, and of course Bursa and Fener are on 28, and then there's a 3-point drop off there. But yeah, it's super tight, and this was really a must-win match for them, especially heading into those 2 weeks away against Beşiktaş, and then they have Başakşehir. So, do they have Başakşehir at home or away?
This Göztepe, they have them away.
So they're playing back-to-back away games. Yeah, that's not very good for Göztepe. And for example, Rize, I think the difference here really with Rize is Rize can go into those matches, I think, playing a little bit more freely. And I would not put it past them to beat any of those top sides because they're playing some great football, Rizespor, right now.
Yeah.
And they got the confidence going and they're in the right flow. And the same cannot be said for Göztepe. They're really in a tight spot right now. I mean, if they could get some points at Beşiktaş next week, those will be golden points for them. But really, they could just as easily come out of these next 2 matches with no points. And then it's imagine if Bursa or Fenerbahce take at least 1 win, then the gap is already 4 points, and it's going to be very tough for them. And who would have thunk it that at the halfway mark, Göztepe would be in such a perilous position at this point in at this stage in the league.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's move forward to the main event of the evening then. Beşiktaş against Konyaspor. This was a very important match in regards to the European tickets, mainly the Europa League tickets. Beşiktaş winning this one right at the death, 3-2 against Konyaspor. Adem Ljajic opening the scoreline in the 14th minute. Ömer Ali Şainer pulling things level in the 20th, but Burak Yilmaz put Beşiktaş back ahead in the 34th minute from a nice free kick. Morike Fofana stunned the home crowd in the 75th minute with a wonderful finish. But that didn't last. The joy for Aykut Kocaman. They almost pulled off a robbery, so to speak, a hold-up. But Shinji Kagawa gets the winner for Besiktas in the 3rd minute of added time after coming on as a 75th minute substitute. But it could have been different though, because right before that there was a penalty shout for Konyaspor. I think there was more made out of it after the match rather than during the match, because Hadžiahmetović was the player that was fouled but actually didn't go down, still got the cross in. But a lot of controversy about that from the likes of Erman Toroğlu, who likes to be relevant by shouting things, of course. 5 goals and 1 assist in 7 matches for Burak Yilmaz. That puts his total on 10 goals this season in 14 total appearances. So it's a shame he's played so little, because he could have been a contender for that top scorer role probably. Going to throw to you first, Pat. What did you think of the late penalty position for Konyaspor? Penalty or no penalty?
Again, it's just one of those things that on one day it could be one thing, but the next week something completely different.
Özer, penalty or not for you in the final few minutes there for Konyaspor?
Yes, I think it should have been a penalty, but Ahmetović, I suppose you could say credit to him or more fault to him for not going down, but had he gone down, I think the referee would have had no choice but to award the penalty.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I mean, I think you rarely see these types of things given when the player stays on his keeps his footing. I think if he goes down, then like you said, there's really not much the referee can do other than give the penalty, unless of course he cannot give the penalty, but then VAR will probably interject. But I think the mistake here is that he did not go down. It was not really that much contact, because he managed to easily stay on his footing and still get that cross in. So I don't know. Sometimes you have these discussions where a player does get brought down. It's like, it's not enough for me for a penalty, which for me it's either a foul or not. I don't know. It's a contact sport, but if he goes down, it's a penalty, I think.
Kaan, can I ask you about
Sure.
about Karius? What do you think? How do you think he performed? There's been a lot of criticism about him.
I think the criticism on him is absurd. Of course, that first goal he doesn't look good there, but on the second goal, what can he do? I mean, for me, the only right decision there was for him to come to put Fofana under pressure to make a quick decision and hopefully force him to make the wrong decision, which in this case was shooting, and that worked. But unfortunately for Karius, the shot was absolutely amazing. But I don't know. I mean, look, he faced 3 shots on the day. He conceded 2 goals. So then you quickly hear Turkish fans around the Twitter universe say, "Oh, you can't make a single save." But look, if your team you can only give away 3 chances. Like, look today at Galatasaray, how many chances that were given away, but many good saves by Muslera. But there's still a difference when you're facing a sort of header or something. A one-on-one position is always difficult. It's always going to go 50-50. It's tough, and I think it's very harsh to put all the blame on him when you see that in both those games it's Najib's positional mistake that allows that pass to be played so easily, that allows a player to be slipped through, and everyone's piling on Karius, but there's nobody's saying anything about the defensive issue. And I'm not really only talking about the back line, but I'm talking about the collective defending, which has been a problem throughout the season.
And I don't understand the obsession with Najib, to be honest. I think he's extremely overrated, always has been. And
he's not overrated. I think all Besiktas fans think he's absolutely shit. But for some reason,
maybe overrated by Şenol. In that case, by Şenol Güneş. And just going back to Karius, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you might have tweeted this. Something that Şenol said after the game about Karius, saying, if I had Tolga, I would play him.
Yeah.
I was shocked that he would make such a statement in public. Really, really shocked.
Absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, that's the thing, and that's one of those things that I really hate about Şenol Güneş is that he has his favorite. He has his favorites, but when you're not on a short list of, look at İsmet Miran, he's the scapegoat for the Fenerbahce draw. We haven't seen him. He's quote unquote injured. I mean, look, the guy has missed 2 matches. That means that the injury has to be significant enough, right? So then there has to be an official communication from the club. to speak on, he has a slight strain or whatever, hamstring, whatever, then there's a communication, because usually then there's an MRI, and if there's an MRI, there's going to be a public statement. Look, there's nothing like that. Last week, the journalists of BN just asked him before the match. Agun, I guess, asked him before the match, Miran's not in the squad, and he said, no, he's not here. And no mention at all of him being injured or anything. So that's typical Chenol, trying to pawn off that implosion on one player, and I think Karius is being sacrificed too, because he's not Turkish, first and foremost, and secondly because he's not Beşiktaş's player and he won't be here next year, I think. I mean, his loan is for 2 years, but at this point I can't see. It's a completely toxic environment, and the lynching of him has been going on since the beginning of the season, really. Every single even minuscule mistake he makes gets scrutinized. It's silly. I'm not saying that Karius has been impressive this season, because he hasn't. He's been average at best. But I don't think he is playing in an environment where he is going to be allowed to be great. Look, Serkan Kırıntılı here in this match makes 10 saves, and statistically that looks impressive. But when we look at his saves, only one of them was really good. That was on a lens shot. And then the rest of them were decent or simple saves. So you have 10 saves, but maybe 2 or so are worth mentioning. The other 8 are just stat padding. But when you're Konyaspor, you're going to face a lot more shots, so it's much easier to pad your stats a little bit with relatively easy saves like that. Now, it's very rarely going to occur that a goalkeeper of Beşiktaş, Galatasaray, or Başakşehir is going to face 7, 8, 9 shots in a match. That just doesn't happen very often. I mean, what happened tonight with Muslera, that's something you almost never see. Muslera being forced to make 7 saves in a match. That doesn't happen very often. So I think when people are looking at the shots faced and all that kind of stuff, it's very misleading. You have to put it in the proper context. You really, if you want to analyze it properly, you have to look at every single shot individually. And I think when you do that, because those shots, the 27 shots were only for 2019. I think when you look at 2019, I mean, people were saying just 2 weeks ago how he was really performing well in 2019 so far. Then the Fenerbahce match happened, and suddenly they have to find someone to blame. Oh, well, a long shot from Hasan Ali Kaldırım went in, so it must be the goalkeeper's fault. But let's get back to this match briefly. Despite the fact that Konyaspor did have that penalty shout at the end, and for me, because he stays on his legs, I don't think you can say much. For me, it's not a penalty because he doesn't go down, which is kind of also a little bit counterintuitive, perhaps, because then you're kind of encouraging players to dive on purpose. But no, I mean, the right thing for him to do on one hand, but on the other hand... But I mean, if it was given, I think it would have been harsh because he didn't go down. Had he gone down, there's not much you can say, because then there's no debating on was the contact enough. Because he is not going down, I think the contact wasn't enough to really disturb him. I mean, it's not like he suddenly had to completely regain his footing and it forced him to fudge his cross. But anyway, about the match itself, based on the game plan they had, I think they were really lucky to even have that point still within reach that late in the match, given that all they did really throughout the match were those 2 counterattacks. And you could say, well, that's tactically perfectly played, but I think that's really gambling with... Yeah, I mean, this match could have been 4-5-1 if Beşiktaş was more efficient. So I think tactically, when it comes from Aykut's approach to this game, not the best choices made. In my opinion, I think it's a deserved win in the end. Beşiktaş, had I think on all the metrics were far and beyond ahead. They should have put this match beyond Konyaspor far earlier, but this kind of been their season really, where as soon as Beşiktaş went 1-0 up, you kind of had that feeling like, oh well, now there's going to be a little bit of a lapse of concentration and they're going to score, and sure, yep, they did. Not so long after the opener. Let's talk about the goals quickly. The quality of the goals, though. Pat, what was the standout for you in this match in terms of goals?
I think, to be honest, it was just my favourite was the last goal. To be honest, I think No, I think fair play to Kagawa to not give up, to kind of show that, I guess, Japanese steel to not just right, this is it, 2-2, not great, but there you go. These things happen, but to keep fighting right to the final whistle, really, which is kind of what you want. So that was the outstanding one for me.
For you, Özer, best goal of the match?
I'd say Burak's free kick. It was very impressive. It was a good old school thunderbolt from him.
Yeah, remember him
showing his quality again.
Scoring one or two like that when he was at Galatasaray. Not really a free kick specialist though. So when he stepped up, I did have the feeling it was going to go in, because he doesn't do it too often, and when he does, he usually does it pretty well, which is weird.
He does it in style. Yeah, that's right.
What about the Fofana goal? What did you guys think about that?
Fofana's goal was the chip.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, it was a pretty classy finish, actually, I've got to say.
Yeah, it reminded me a little bit of Nihat's goal against the Czech Republic, because it kind of curled into that top corner.
Oh, yes. I just get goosebumps thinking about it.
Okay, so anyway, this result for Beşiktaş, of course, in favor of Beşiktaş, because now they move up to 44 points, and this pretty much has guaranteed them a top 4 finish almost, because now they're 9 points clear on Konyaspor, who are in 5th place, who are on 35 points. So at this point, Konyaspor are kind of in a position of, they kind of have to start hoping that either Galatasaray win the cup or Beşiktaş get a European ban or something like that. Trabzonspor are on 40 points, so of course they're on 4th place, so that's also a 5-point drop-off. So that that fight for the Europa League seems to be at this point done. Although, of course, a lot can change in just 2 or 3 weeks. So, but for Beşiktaş, strange things have to happen for them not to at least get a Europa League ticket at this point. So let's move over to Monday. Monday was only one match, Galatasaray taking on Antalyaspor, and this match finished 5-0. Very impressive scoreline. Scoring procedure goes as follows. Sofyan Figuli opening the scoring in the 17th minute. A deflected shot that was Onyekuru doubled the scoreline in the 65th minute. I got noted down here. And then he made the 4th goal as well in the 78th minute. And then Mbaye Diagne.
Ndiaye as well. And Ndiaye's goal as well.
Ndiaye's goal? Don't you mean Diagne?
Well, Diagne had the one that was disallowed, but before Diagne's disallowed one, it was Ndiaye who got the 4th goal.
Oh, I thought it was Diagne. I thought it was Diagne who scored I thought it was Diagne who scored the 3rd goal and the 5th goal, and Onyekuru scored the 2nd and the 4th. No?
Yeah. Onyekuru got the 2nd and the 4th, and Ndiaye the 3rd, and Diagne the 5th.
Oh, okay.
He kind of fell into the goal as he scored, but he was in the right place at the right time.
Let's see. All right, you're right. I could have sworn it was Diagne. Can't tell these guys apart, apparently, because Diagne changed his hairstyle again. But okay, so that getting on the score sheet was actually quite important then for Diagne. I thought he had already got one in the bag, but apparently not. So Diagne getting his 1st goal since his debut then, and his 2nd goal for Galatasaray, and that would make his 22nd in total, putting him 10 goals ahead of both Fugaro Dayega and Papi Cisse. A little bit of a misleading scoreline though. Galatasaray, if you would look at the scoreline, easy win for them, you'd think, but maybe not so much. Özer, can you tell us a little bit more about how you viewed this match?
So it was, very misleading. 5-0 result, and yet the man of the match for me is Fernando Muslera. And just to make sure that I wasn't going crazy, I put a poll up on my Twitter page asking who do you think the man of the match was. And I listed Muslera, Luyendama, Onyekuru, or somebody else as the 4 options. And as of now, 83% have said Muslera as well, so I'm not going crazy.
He made 100.
7. Well, yeah, that's true. Maybe everyone else is crazy. But 17% is crazy.
Yes.
But he made 7 absolutely top-class saves during the match.
Yeah.
At any point, which could have made it 1-1, it could have made it 2-2, or we could have even been 3-1 down.
Yeah, exactly.
At one point. So I think that the fact that we were able to stay in the game and to keep adding to our strength by adding goals is all thanks to Muslera.
No, I totally agree. Yeah, I think, and it sounds strange to say it could have been 3-1 to Antalyaspor just after half time when you look at the score, but it's completely true. It's completely true. He can, as I said at the beginning, it's just incredible how different things would have been if you'd had a keeper like Volkan in your goal. The manager for some reason just like a goalkeeping equivalent of Sabri, for example.
I think that's a good analogy. Yeah.
Or Najib.
Yeah. But because he completely, and it could have been 3-1. It could have been easily. It could have gone completely the other way, and yet because he managed to keep them in, and it's basically the second half was like the floodgates opening, and once they started, they just couldn't stop really.
The misleading thing that we sometimes see with Galatasaray, where in these home matches, like I remember the match against Alanyaspor earlier in the season, I think that ended 6-0, but that was a very competitive match in the first half, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but Galatasaray got a very controversial goal just before halftime that put them 1-0 up, and then in the second half it kind of snowballed and they just completely destroyed Alanyaspor. But up until that first half, there were a couple of, I believe, penalty shots for Alanyaspor that were definitely worth having a look at and stuff like that. And it was a very competitive match, and it was kind of the same thing here, although it kind of remained competitive even with the scoreline ramping up. But not just Muslera, the post as well, twice I think, and Antalyaspor hit the post. They were very unlucky in front of goal, and this I think I have a little bit of a difficulty with saying, well, it could have been 1-3, because that, look, if Galatasaray are ahead and Antalyaspor are pumping to get that equalizer, as soon as they get that equalizer, that's going to have a certain effect on Antalyaspor. The match is going to go different at that point. They might actually go and sit back a little bit more, although they were already quite offensive before the 1-0, so who knows? But I think 5-0, in the end of the day, you have to call a spade a spade. It's a deserved win. You score 5 goals and your goalkeeper had a great match, but it should be mentioned that this wasn't such a straightforward win as you would imagine when you look at the scoring procedures. I think defensively as a team, Galatasaray didn't perform very well, but Muslera had an amazing match, and the posts too. But at the end of the day, a very important win for Galatasaray, and it keeps them in track of leaders Başakşehir, at least to a certain extent. No more deficit increase here.
I just want to say that just from a technical point that the introduction of Ryan Donk in the second half made quite a difference to Galatasaray's control of the game. Yeah. There were quite large gaps in the centre of the park in the first 45 minutes, and I think
so. Some praise Ryan for Fatih Terim
added a bit of bulkiness to that.
Well, let's move over to the standings then. 57 points are our leaders. Başakşehir quite firmly in the lead, 8 points ahead of Galatasaray, who are on 49 points. Then there's a drop up of 5 points in third position, Beşiktaş with 44 points, and then in fourth position there's Trabzonspor with 40 points. And then we have another 5-point drop off to Konyaspor, who are in fifth place. Moving on to the bottom of the table, Akhisar still bottom with 21 points. Then there's Erzurumspor on 22 points, and we have Göztepe, who we have already talked about quite a lot, with 27 points. Then there's both Bursaspor and Fenerbahce on 28 points. Then we have 3 teams on 31 points. Rizespor, Kasımpaşa, and Ankaragücü. So Kasımpaşa are getting into the thick of things really in terms of the relegation zone, because I can't see Rizespor staying in there much longer. I think they'll keep picking up plenty of points here and there. They do have a difficult schedule coming up, as Pat said, but I do think they'll definitely still be getting their points. Kasımpaşa, on the other hand, not looking that bright despite these last 2 draws. Ankaragücü, they'll pick up some more points, I think. Fenerbahce probably too, I would imagine.
I think
Bursaspor and Kasımpaşa, for me, are at the moment Göztepe's biggest rivals, but of course Göztepe failing to beat Kasımpaşa, that's going to be that might prove very crucial at the end of the season when we're tallying up the points. Let's move over to matchday 26. Quickly look at that. On Friday, we have one match. That's Fenerbahce against Demirgroup Sivasspor. Then on Saturday, we have Atikar Konyaspor against Çaykur Rizespor. Akhisar against Kasımpaşa, another important match for that relegation zone. Then we have two more matches. Erzurumspor taking on Trabzonspor and Beşiktaş taking on Göztepe. So a lot of matches with relegation implications there. Göztepe, Erzurumspor, Kasımpaşa, Akhisar, Çaykur Rize, and Fenerbahce all playing within the first 2 days on Friday and Saturday. Then on Sunday we're moving on to Yeni Malatyaspor against Ankaragücü, İstiklal Mobilya Kayserispor taking on Medipol Başakşehir, Antalyaspor against Aytemiz Alanyaspor, the derby, and then of course Bursaspor against Galatasaray. So Bursaspor have a very tough game as well. So the teams in the relegation zone have a difficult schedule coming up. I think Fenerbahce is going to pick up a win against Sivasspor. They tend to do so. But if you would have to tell someone who's new to Turkish football and they're going to watch one game, which of the matches from next weekend would you say watch that one?
I think I would have to say, to some extent, I don't know. For some reason, I've got a good feeling about the Konyaspor Rizespor match. I think Konyaspor will be wanting to kind of bounce back from that. So close to getting a good point in Istanbul, but also Rizespor are sort of climbing up the table. So I think that should be quite a feisty affair as well. Two teams with quite unique fan groups as well. A bit of passion then. I'm sure there'll be some black seasiders heading down to the Central Anatolia to watch that match. So I think that'll be quite a feisty one. That'll be my recommendation, I think.
What for you, Özer? Which match would you recommend to people to watch if they had to watch one game?
I might go for Beşiktaş Göztepe actually. Two games, two teams who like to play attacking, open football. Göztepe really needs something out of that game, so they're going to give everything. Beşiktaş playing at home. I think that could be a good game. Also a good advert for Turkish football because Beşiktaş have obviously a wonderful stadium. I think the Kayseri Başakşehir game could be quite an interesting match as well because Kayseri, although they got thumped 3-0 this week, they're not really a bad team, and it could be a bogey stadium for Başakşehir. So we'll see.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think Başakşehir are the most impressive side on the road, though, so I wouldn't hold your breath. For me, it's difficult really to say. There's not really... I don't think there's that many attractive games this weekend, actually. And usually there's always one or two that really catch the eye, but... Yeah, I think I'm going to go side with Pat and go for the Konyaspor-Rizespor matches because Rizespor is in such great form and because Konyaspor are kind of in a position now where they can't afford to drop any more points if they do want to qualify for Europe next season. But I think that'll do it for us for episode 4. Pat, I want to thank you once again for joining us, and Özer, of course, thank you very much for joining us as well as always. Thank you very much for listening, and see you all next week.